Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, November 18th, 2021. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello and welcome to the show this week for a take two. A little peek behind the curtain. This is the second time we're recording this intro. We had some technical difficulties. It's always better the second time around. I'll tell you, as someone who has to regularly make video on the internet, it's hard to, sometimes we resist a second take because you feel like you nailed it on the first take. But if you are someone who is interested in filming videos yourself and have to do long extended segments to camera, try the take two. I promise you, 95% of the time, you're going to feel better about it. So let's feel better about this one. I'm joined by two colleagues, Kishore. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. And Jeremy Williams.
Hi.
No, not near as good as first take. The magic's gone. The magic's on.
We have nothing left to talk about with each other for the rest of the week.
Good to see you both.
Good to see you both. You actually have had an exciting week that I want to hear a lot about because you were down in LA this past week.
Yes. I took a personal trip down to LA after a whirlwind of a last week. Last week, I don't know if you saw the stuff on the site. We launched our short film, The Beacon, with the spacesuits, of which the first episode of the Build series is actually on the YouTube channel right now. You should absolutely check that out. Multi-hour, multi-part Build series. I did a couple projects. Of course, Augmented World Expo was on, so we had the demo of the Lynx R1 and just cramming things in. But on Friday, for the first time in a year and a half, took the family, took the baby, took Danica, drove down to LA to visit some friends and go to DesignerCon, one of our favorite conventions of the year. It was at the Anaheim Anaheim Convention Center, right Disneyland adjacent. Didn't go to Disneyland. I'll tell you, traveling with a 7-month-old adds a lot of complexities to the logistics and scheduling. But the convention itself was delightful. So enjoyable. I shared some pictures on social media. But Jeremy, you asked last week.
I did.
What do you see at DesignerCon? What's
I did.
there? Art. We've shot videos there before, and a lot of those same artists were there. So people who do sculptures, thematically, you got the cutesy stuff. There's some of more street art type art. There's what you would traditionally think of as designer toys, so vinyl toys that may have some subversive design, so cute characters mixed up with some more of the macabre or grotesque elements, and then just really there's some unique art. One of our favorites is there's an artist we follow. Her name is Lori. She does what would you call them? They're not paintings. They're like composites using vinyl. So vinyl as her material, but like these big painting size illustrations with vinyl. And there's one I tweeted of a Snow White evil queen in the mirror. That was just one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
I agree. I was going to call out that piece because I assumed that was a one-off, and that didn't look vinyl to me. It looked like they were shards of mirror that had been sort of laid like stained glass with, and somehow the imagery, it was as if like, it's hard to describe, right? But it was like shattered in all directions, and some shards were the beautiful evil witch, and that some shards were the evil old witch who gave the apple to Snow White, and it was beautiful.
It was a massive framed, in this incredibly ornate, like golden frame. I want to say maybe like 36 inches by 36 inches, something you really put above a mantelpiece. But you're right; it looked like looking into the magic mirror of the film, and it was a shattered glass interpretation spliced between the queen and the witch. But all of that was stitched vinyl, sewn vinyl. So the reflective part that looked like glass was actually just very highly reflective, vinyl clothing material almost.
Wow.
And which adds a sheen to it. We have I guess you could call them not mosaics really. but they're a little bit like paint by numbers in terms of like the aesthetic, with the colors. And we have one of her portraits of Amy Winehouse in our house that we bought from her a couple years ago at DesignerCon. It's one of our favorite pieces. But like art like that, there are artists who work at big special effects firms like Steve Wang, who designed the Predator and Guyver. He was there, and he and his team had some like their resin kits, some beautiful stuff. But yeah, it was just fun to be at the convention and say hi to the folks at Mondo who do their vinyl toys, Metacom, Mighty Jacks, and just say hi to a lot of people we haven't seen in a year and a half.
Did you bring anything home?
What did I get? Yeah, we got one or two pieces. I don't want to give away too much of what I got because there's some artists that there's stuff that we couldn't afford, and it's not like picking favorites. But I will say the one place that we went to afterward was we went with some friends who are locals who are based in the LA area, and they went with us to DesignerCon. But they also, for the longest time, had wanted to take us to this other place in LA called Frank and Son. And
Other place. This place is legend. What are you talking about?
Sure, I've heard, I like kind of heard about it. I've been, friends of telling us to go for a while, but I didn't know about the legendary status of Frankenstein, or maybe I didn't believe about the legendary status. What have you, as someone who'd never been there, what have you heard about it?
So like Frankenson is it is a flea market almost. It's like a set of vendors that all sell collectibles and like action figures. Some of them exceptionally rare, like old out of print, out of the scope items, but it's really the variety of vendors that really makes the show. And then recently, I think it was 2 years ago, might have been a little more than that now, they took over a Costco. Um, and it's like, I think it's in like City of Industry. It's kind of just right off the highway. I mean, it's like in an old Costco, right? And now it's basically this giant mart where they have, vendors every aisle. It's probably like 200 vendors now. I've never been, but it's like on that list, like every time I go to LA. But when you put that on your itinerary and your wife is like, you want to take me to a giant toy store, it usually falls off for some reason. So tell me about it. What was the experience like going into Frankenstein?
So the way it was explained to me is that it's run by a guy named Frank and his son since 1988. They own a trucking company, a shipping company, and they love collectibles. And we're talking about over it was like 30 years ago now, right? 33 years ago, they took over a warehouse, a 5,000 square foot warehouse, and offered it as a place for people to trade trading cards, baseball cards. Sports memorabilia was how it started. And you think about in the late 80s and the early 90s, you have swap meets, you have flea markets, and this is very much in that flea market vibe, of people renting out a booth space of like 10 foot by 10 foot booth space, and putting and having, if you couldn't afford to have a full-time rent a full location to open a sporting goods store or a trading card store, you could set up this place and they would do it maybe like once or twice a week, like on a weekend. It would be not a 7-day a week type thing. It's of course changed and grown since then. The collectibles marketplace, the collectibles culture has changed, not just from you go through the early 90s phase of baseball cards, of comic books, to physical goods, to physical like collectibles, like figurines, the Funko, all these phases of stuff. You go with like the late 90s when the Phantom Menace came out, and you had this huge resurgence of Kenner Star Wars toys, right? All of that has cycled through this culture. And of course, the shopping experience has changed for consumers with internet shopping, with eBay, Amazon, with Toys R Us disappearing, with the rise of your Best Buys and Walmarts and your big box stores. But this type of flea market in this marketplace has endured in this because it's like this own community. We met some people who had storefronts, who had booths for over 20 years. And I had never been to the previous locations. I think they must have moved like half a dozen times by now. But you're right. A couple of years ago, they moved into an old Sam's Club or Costco warehouse space. So we've all been to one of those Costco's. Think of that, except the whole thing becomes like a vendor area at Comic-Con. You have high ceilings, it's brightly lit, there's air conditioning, and along the you walk in, like there's a big parking lot. It's open now 3 days a week. I think the holiday is 7 days a week. But you walk in and there's a guy in a Mandalorian costume welcoming you in there. And you walk in and along the sides of the entire what would be the food court of a Costco are it's like a museum of collectibles. They even have a Toys R Us like lit up logo sign from an old Toys R Us that what was abandoned that they acquired and put up a big Toys R Us lit up sign. But hundreds of vendors. Not everyone has their own specialty. So like if you love Marvel Legends 6-inch figures, or maybe like 4 or 5 vendors that specialize just in that, including customized stuff. There's imported stuff from overseas. It's not all Funko, which is the thing that I was really surprised to find. There's still the sports memorabilia section. There's the trading card, magic card section. It's a whole TCG trading card area where people have tables set up to play their games and trade Pokemon. There's Disney pins. There's whatever people collect in the world of pop culture and fandom. There's gonna be a booth. There's dinosaurs, right? Just Jurassic Park and dinosaurs. There's just Disney movie memorabilia, 6th scale stuff that I love. And we spent 3 hours there, but you could easily spend half a day there. There's food, and there was food right outside in the area, but it's like you want to devote a whole day to just hanging out and looking there. It would be a dream place to go if you were a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old,
or a 40-year-old.
Or yeah.
Restore my faith in humanity and tell me nobody is selling mystery boxes.
I don't think I saw a single mystery box.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't think I saw. Yeah, no, it's. When I went in, I was curious about 2 things. Like, I was skeptical, right? I was like, okay, if this is a place that's been going for 30 years, am I going to go there to try to hunt? Is it going to be like that flea market experience where you're going to try to find the rare thing, the rare video game cartridge or the rare comic book? And if so, wouldn't all the good stuff be picked out already?
Yeah,
right?
like a flea market.
Yeah, exactly. Like like if it's open, 3 days a week now, am I getting the slim pickings from the leftovers? And it's not like just old stuff. They do like the vendors are active in terms of sourcing new stuff too. So they build relationship with the customers, and customers go there as if they would go to their neighborhood comic book store every month. And so, or their neighborhood toy store, because there are so few. There's no Toys R Us, right? And people don't just want to go to a Target. They go to here to get their new stuff because those vendors are not just selling vintage things; they are still tied to distributors and get stuff from the big companies. So there's a lot of new stuff. Prices for old stuff, I'd say,
high.
The face value it's like eBay plus 10%.
Yeah.
So you're paying like a convenience tax of no shipping and being able to get it there.
And being able to see it in person and being able to see things that you can't necessarily search for. You're paying for the infrastructure.
Yeah,
but
you're
you
paying for
also
discovery.
You also get to see custom stuff that you wouldn't see otherwise. Like if you look at Norm's photos on his Twitter feed, there's like a Buzz Lightyear that's sort of zombified, if you will, that somebody did like a custom paint job and creation on it, and it's awesome. And I'm not searching Buzz Lightyear on eBay for something Buzz Lightyear zombie, but that is an awesome piece. And you have a picture of all the different heads of a sculpt from a
6-inch line, like 3D printed, like and there's one booth, one of my favorite booths. I was lured in because it was next to a big like pillar that's like holding up for the center of the warehouse, and there was a predator like on up 10 feet high, like crucified essentially on this pillar with blood gushing out. I'm like, ooh, what is this? Walked in, immediately saw dioramas at 1/12 scale of scenes from Aliens, Predator, and all these science fiction films from the 80s, just like incredibly detailed dioramas. And this woman walks up and says, "Ooh, my husband made those." And it turns out this couple at Zap Toys, Zapped Toys, they're retirees. Their children are out of the house. They don't want to keep the toys in the house, and so they have had this booth for over a decade where his dioramas get put up on display, and then they sell them, at pretty reasonable prices. And they were just fun. They just wanted to share those dioramas, and if they sell them, great. If they don't, that's okay. But it's a place for them to hang out a couple days a week and meet other collectors. And then in the same booth, they had die-cast like military airplanes that were gorgeous, and everything was still pretty reasonably priced. There's a little bit of like negotiating you could do. I heard like we didn't do a ton of that, but I was also surprised that some of the things I keep eyes on overseas, imported things, uh, some of these vendors got them much earlier, so they had got direct access to distributors and things that I would have normally paid $60 for. I was happy to pay $65 for to get it a couple months before a normal retailer online.
Do you get the impression that some of these people basically pack up their booth from conventions and then go here on the down weeks?
Other way around. During a Comic-Con, some of the booths here move their booths over to a convention. They think of Frankenson as their home base,
Yeah.
and the convention as the spinoff.
I guess that's what I meant.
Yeah.
That's really super. That's a wonderful way for them to make some revenue between conventions.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to take your pictures and go over to my financial planner and be like, when you asked for that, like, what is your ideal retirement? Like, this is what it is. Like, I want to be this guy.
Oh, I thought you wanted to shop there.
Yeah. I'll open a shop there and just hang out.
Oh.
Space, just like at a Comic-Con, space is sold out. Like booth, you cannot get a booth space. If you wanted to, you would have to wait till someone gave up theirs. It's a very coveted space. And some booths were, not everyone has to be there every day. So some of the booths were closed up. So you get a sense that some people make it their primary business. Some people just do it for fun. But it's like when you go to an airport, all the vendors like in the airport know each other, but people just pass through. You get a sense that like the vendors here, they all know each other, and they help. They have their little community, and then locals shop in, but there are a lot of travelers who stop by because they've heard about it or because there's something like DesignerCon in town, and then they pass through. So it's like it's in that sense very much like a Comic-Con. So Frankenson, it's in the Los Angeles area, devoted an entire day.
City of Industry,
and there's a parking lot in this location, so that's a big plus. Previously, apparently, it was like in a business park. That's what I heard. So parking was very tough and brightly lit, and good air conditioning as well. So a good place to spend a day. Even bring the kids. Be careful if you bring a young kid who won't want to leave. We all remember going to Toys R Us and not wanting to leave until our parents got something. We've heard many stories of kids who who want to spend a little bit too much time or want to take everything home. So
yeah,
right.
I'm sure he was the person that didn't want to leave.
Where does he get that from?
Yeah. Last week, right after the show, there was also on Friday the Disney Plus Day, which is just another big event day for a big media company like Disney to put out trailers and get people excited about the upcoming shows. So we had a couple announcements out of that, but I think the reviews of like the first 2 episodes of Hawkeye came out, so reviewers have received those, and apparently it's amazing. People are very happy about what they've seen of Hawkeye, but I think probably the most exciting thing for folks of our generation is the return of the 90s X-Men, the animated series.
Okay, so I'm hyped about this, but upon reflection, I have some questions. So they announced via a meme, which was a little much corporate Disney, via the meme of Wolverine holding the picture, that X-Men the animated series is returning, and they termed it not a reboot but a continuation of that series, which feels weird because the animation in that series gets a little wonky at points, and the storylines are a little all over the place. There's some classic episodes, and the theme is the greatest theme song for any animated show of all time. So I'm very hyped about that, about what they're gonna do. Obviously, I don't think it's gonna be canon, and I think that's why they say it's a continuation of that earlier series. Um, but it's like it was what beyond reading like Chris Claremont comics, it was my real introduction to the breadth of the X-Men. So I'm excited for a whole new set of people to be introduced to the X-Men in a really fun, interesting way, because the breadth of X-Men villains is really big. I think this is going to be awesome. I have questions about the reboot.
Yeah,
Or
we talked a couple weeks ago about the success of or the popularity of Ghostbusters in the late '80s, where Ghostbusters the movie was it was fair to say the comedy is geared more toward adults, the SNL crowd, right? And a lot of those jokes are maybe not necessarily for kids, but it was because of the real Ghostbusters cartoon that you also made a version of Ghostbusters friendly for a whole family audience. And I think you could say the same thing about the '90s cartoons that were on Fox, whether it's the Spider-Man animated series or the X-Men, where yes, there are comic books and Chris Claremont and the Jim Lee stuff, and that was more hardcore and intense in terms of the deep dive into X-Men lore, where the cartoon was really palatable for a younger audience, and it was still the same aesthetic, and it was animated, of course, so it was, and so you have this mixing of that world, the animated world, with, and it was like a gateway into reading the comic books. We don't really have that today. You have the MCU, and the MCU did make it. I think there have been some reports that comic book sales have risen because of that, or people have become more aware of certain characters like Captain Marvel, and you even have the Guardians of the Galaxy and the comic books kind of adjusting, pivoting to be more akin to the portrayals in the MCU films. But X-Men, there is no X-Men film, and this is like a pure nostalgia play. I'm cautiously optimistic because have you watched the old X-Men animated series
they
cartoons recently?
they don't really hold up.
They don't really hold up. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
theme song holds up.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. The opening and the animation holds up. But the storylines and the animation really better in our heads than it was. So yeah, I'm really curious how much of from a storytelling perspective and a scripting perspective, if they can retain the aesthetic but at least make the stories more interesting for a modern day audience. Uh,
I will tell you, the animated show I was actually most excited about was the Baymax one, where we actually get to see a whole show based on Baymax, and it'll probably be delightful and fun, and there'll be hijinks. And I thought that was the best trailer of all of Disney Plus Day, including all the teasers we saw. And frankly, I'm a little marveled out. So to see something that was, slightly Marvel adjacent and Baymax get its due.
Marvel
Uh,
adjacent. That's funny.
I mean, it was a comic book. That's why I'm
Yeah, I
kind
hear
of
you.
calling it my adjacent. So I think I was most excited about that. And then I would say my third most hype thing was seeing just the very teasery images from Moon Knight, because Oscar
yeah.
Isaac I thought looked really good.
Yeah, the Toad of She-Hulk, they changed the logo and it looks almost like a parody, like ABC courtroom drama.
Yeah.
So they're leading into that, which was the She-Hulk comic book that Dan Slott wrote. It was very much, I think, just like the Hawkeye show is based on the Manufacturing run. I think this is going to be based on that Dan Slott run from a decade ago. So the first glimpses, and I think Oscar Isaac, making much better use of him here than, let's say, X-Men Apocalypse. It's his return to the Marvel adjacent franchises. Now, we did also have the release of Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings on Disney Plus. And for one of us here, Jeremy Williams, it was your first time watching the movie. You got to see it at home.
Yeah, had you
And
not seen it, Kishore? Or have
No,
you
I've
seen
seen
it?
it.
You saw it in the theater? Yeah, I thought it was great. I expected it to be great because everyone had seen it, or a lot of people had seen it, and it got like 90 something on Rotten Tomatoes. So my hopes were high, and they were satisfied. My son and I watched it last night. I did not expect it to be shot and choreographed in the tradition of kung fu movies. Like that was awesome. I was not prepared for that. I was prepared for standard Marvel fight scenes and special effects, and I was prepared to be wowed by that. I did not expect to see long shots with intense, like highly practiced choreography, and that was awesome. I mean, that was some of the best, just stunt scenes I've seen in a Marvel film, and I really really appreciated that. I mean, look forward to seeing some behind the scenes stuff, which I assume is out on. If you buy it, I bet you get that on Apple TV Plus. I don't know, but that was super cool, and it's obviously a beautiful film, and a very just different tone than a lot of the movies, than a lot of the Marvel movies, where it's not entirely it's not totally black and white. The villain in this film, it kind of has a change towards the end of the film, and if I had one complaint, it was that a lot of that climax of the film was spoiled by the trailer. I have a hard time remembering a time when a trailer showed me like a climactic fight scene that I knew was coming, and halfway through this movie, I was like, "Oh my god, they spoiled the end of the movie for me," because I saw it wasn't anytime soon, and that sure enough, it was father and son fighting in the end, and I knew exactly what was going to happen because I'd seen it in the trailer, and that was a bummer. So shame on Disney for that.
And the whole it's an old conversation that we've had about trailers, and we're certainly going to talk about a big trailer that dropped yesterday, but I don't know if it speaks to the lack of confidence they had in the film, where they felt like they had to show a lot to entice people to get in seats. Steve Martin has one of his big things was like, don't be afraid to show your best joke in your trailer, because otherwise people aren't going to watch the film at all. And maybe that proves true also for fight scenes. Certainly we want surprises, but if we're going to nitpick trailers, as so many people do these days, yeah, you can piece together, and sometimes you're even subconsciously waiting for a thing you saw in the trailer to appear. So I'm actually not opposed to what Marvel did with like Infinity War, and straight up lying to the viewers and putting scenes in a trailer that never appeared, or
100%,
or omitting CG. There was a famous scene in Infinity War where they're running in Wakanda and Hulk is like on the background there. He's never in the movie, right? He's never. It was if it got people in seats, it did the job of the trailer. If it helped people who were curious or didn't know this movie was coming out, give them a sense of what they've given the bare minimum of what they could expect. I'm here for a martial arts film. I'm here for a superhero film. I might like this character because of X, Y, and Z. That's what the trailer is supposed to do. With the martial arts, it was, you got to give full credit to their choreographer, Brad Allen, who passed away shortly after the film was made. And he was one of Jackie Chan's acolytes, and on the Jackie Chan stunt team. And a lot of, from the bus scene we've talked about, that's very much inspired by Jackie Chan style, late 80s, early 90s Hong Kong films. And the opening, you got to give him full props for having a extended prologue in Mandarin, and then having like a wushu fight, a huge, Crouching Tiger style, wire fu fight right in the opening that set the tone, and then contrasting that with, a whole San Francisco sequence, which I think is still my favorite sequence in the movie.
Yeah, and a very efficient bus route that needs to be shared with other drivers.
If you haven't seen, there's an incredible Twitter thread written by a bus driver in San Francisco describing what happened in that scene and what was realistic and unrealistic. It's an incredible read.
They can go from like Noe Valley to like California Street in the financial district in like 3 minutes. And that's incredible. Like that was a special effect right there. That was well done. And then without stopping, they're at Ghirardelli Square. It's amazing. It's amazing driving in that film.
The one California, Jeremy, goes up from the Richmond all the way to the marina.
Yeah.
I'm just glad it wasn't, your stereotypical cable car scene, right? Like the cable car in The Rock, that where they're jumping from Los Angeles to San Francisco and back and forth, and suddenly Palace of Fine Arts. But yeah, glad you saw that. You also saw the 1.9 aspect ratio IMAX enhanced version, I presume.
Yeah, it's the default, and I probably would have chosen that anyway, just because who doesn't want more picture? Like, let's fill my TV. But as I said last week, I want it to be sort of director DP approved, and I saw a Twitter thread by somebody who worked on some
Doctor
Marvel
Strange.
movie. Yeah,
it
Doctor
was
Strange.
the director of Doctor Strange, Scott Derrickson.
It was the director?
It was the director of Doctor
wow.
Strange. Tweeted out that he said, okay, it seems like Disney's putting, and I'm paraphrasing, it seems like Disney's putting out versions of these films in 1.9 aspect ratio, acknowledging there was an option if you want to watch the 2:31 aspect ratio, but he had never intended for his movie to be seen at home in that aspect ratio. And a little bit behind the scenes, for that film at least, because there was an official quote unquote IMAX release, he selected certain scenes where the frame would be extended as they filmed it. It would be intended for IMAX. So as they were in the pre-production and production process, not necessarily just in the post process. It wasn't like Endgame or Infinity War where you had the entire film formatted for 1.9 in mind. But regardless, his takeaway is the difference in his mind isn't just what he intended. It was the actual context of what your viewing experience is like, whether you're in a theater, an IMAX certified theater with a 30-foot tall screen versus watching something at home where you may be on anything, from a 30-inch screen to a 70-inch screen, right, at home, or watching on your phone. He said IMAX envelops you and puts you inside the frame wherever you sit. Theatrical, you sit close and you're inside the frame, but if you're back enough, you appreciate the frame composition.
Mm-hmm.
At home, you're inevitably observing the frame, and he didn't intend that with the IMAX cut. And for those of us, even with big TVs, if you have a 77-inch TV, if you're at a standard viewing distance, you're still seeing the border of the movie.
Yeah, some would say if you're at a healthy viewing distance.
Yeah, sure. So maybe the true way to watch it is to be at maybe 3 or 5 feet where you don't see the edges. But the fact that you can see the border of your TV and you can see the frame is fundamentally a different type of experience than what IMAX intends, which is for you that's a blur in your peripheral and you to be enveloped. And they, as the directors, they choose the content on the screen based on that idea that you are not noticing the edges of the frame.
Props to Disney Plus for giving you the choice. Like they're defaulting to the IMAX aspect ratio right now, but you can go to a new tab and there's different versions of the film. So that's cool. I mean, I suppose that's a smart move. It's going to take up hard drive space for them. I don't think it's going to add any bandwidth to them because like no one's going to watch both. Or if they do watch both, they probably would have watched the movie twice anyway. Like it's not, it doesn't cost them much is what I'm saying to have that feature, but it's very sensitive of them to, having seen what happened to Seinfeld on Netflix and The Simpsons and things like that to make that call and offer two options to people. I like that.
I actually don't know when they stream a movie to home and they presume you have a 16:9 TV, which is the standard. Do they hard code the black bars, or is that not part of the video file that gets sent over, and the software, the program, the Disney Plus app just frames it in such that the black bars are done in app versus, and regardless, even if the black bars are encoded and you're sending the same aspect ratio, you have more visual data in the IMAX enhanced version. So the bit rate's got to be upped no matter what. So you're streaming at a higher
Doesn't have to be.
rate.
Doesn't have to be. They could.
I would not want that compromise.
Right. Exactly.
Right. I wouldn't want them to. Then you're asking, a lower per frame detail.
Yes.
Just to have the extra visual data on the top and bottom. And that would make no.
It'd be cool. I'd be interested to see those numbers if anybody extracts that data. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. I did watch Infinity War and Endgame in the IMAX Enhanced, and having seen those movies multiple times at home, but never having seen the IMAX, the opportunity to watch the IMAX versions, it did feel like a different viewing experience. I did notice that things are framed more in epic scope.
It was also 4 a.m. for you, so I'm going to say
Yeah.
that played a role. This feels totally different.
Oh my goodness! I can see through the cosmos. It's like I have the reality gem is in full effect here. Yeah, but they're the first studio to do it, and I hope more studios do follow suit with their apps to give us at least the option for that 1.9 aspect ratio. Hey everyone, Norm here. Before we continue, I want to let you know that this week's episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible with support from itpro.tv. Start or grow your IT career with online IT training from itpro.tv. Did the recent ransomware attack on the gas pipeline catch your attention? It's another example of how cybersecurity professionals are in demand. There are more than 500,000 open cybersecurity roles, and you can become a CyberSec Pro with online training. It's never too late to start a career in IT or move up the ladder, and itpro.tv has you covered. From CompTIA and Cisco to Easy Counsel and Microsoft, itpro.tv has nearly 6,000 hours of on-demand training and engaging hosts who present information in a talk show format. They're live every day, and shows go studio to web in 24 hours. Courses are conveniently listed by category, certification, and job role, and stream itpro.tv courses live and on demand worldwide via Roku, Apple TV, PC, or their iOS and Android apps. Learn IT, pass your certs, and get a great job with itpro.tv. Visit itpro.tv/test to save 30% off all plans. That's itpro.tv/test. Once again, itpro.tv/test. Now back to the show. Okay, let's talk about the Spider-Man trailer. Now, I'm going to set some ground rules because some people are going to be spoiled the reverse, so I don't want to get too deep into the contents of the trailer. But Sony/Marvel did release the final, I guess, theatrical trailer. This is the second of the two trailers that they put out for Spider-Man No Way Home. Outside of the actual content of the trailer itself, I want to say two things. One, I think it was a little absurd that they had a big in-person viewing party for this trailer where people signed up or won tickets or waited in line for a free debut in theater of this trailer when you could have just watched it at home at the same time when it was put on YouTube.
I mean, Tom Holland did show up at the one in New York or the one in LA.
And sure, it's part of the marketing. It was successful. Maybe people at the time, maybe they wanted the energy of the crowd, whatever, but they waited in line for however long to sit down for a 3-minute trailer and then a little bit of a Q&A, I guess, with the actors. Whatever. That's a marketing thing. Two, what I found interesting is that this trailer, you had to kind of watch the first trailer to get. It was like a two-parter. Like trailers no longer stand alone by themselves. Like they have full awareness that people saw the first trailer, had questions, and then they address some of those without retreading the premise even of the film.
Yeah, my review for this trailer is you shouldn't watch this trailer. If you want to see the movie, don't watch this trailer. It doesn't. I don't think it spoils anything in terms of like an ending, but there's like enough. There's too much like detail in this that is unnecessary. I also found it weird that they didn't use the Spider-Man music at all in this. And so it also felt off. There's no like da 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 da, like even in the undertones of the music at all. It's actually Doctor Strange heavy, which I was like, I don't need this. This is a Spider-Man movie, right? Like, where's my Spider-Man part? And so I found it disappointing in that way. So I'm still hyped about the movie. Don't get me wrong, but I just don't think this is a necessary addition to your viewing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't come at it usually from the same perspective as you guys, but I gotta say, like I'm not over the hill about this trailer, and I'll probably see the film, but like this trailer didn't hit any notes for me. I didn't laugh out loud. I didn't get excited. I'm just starting to sort of see the Marvel formula, and it's like, oh, okay, yep. There's the Scooby-Doo joke that's supposed to be, self-referential in a way, and like, okay, we know we're in a film and it's funny, and I just like, yeah, okay, but I'm seeing characters on the screen sort of laugh at things, and I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. But it could just be the trailer cut. These movies are typically pretty good, so I'll see it. But I didn't need this trailer.
What was interesting from a plot perspective, and I think a lot of this, because the movie is so shrouded in mystery, and also the speculation is way off the rails now, thanks WandaVision and the Mephisto stuff. Uh, I think they're fully cognizant of that, and there's some clear moments where fans have even watched this trailer and noticed that, okay, there's probably supposed to be a character in this shot that they didn't include the CG for,
Hmm.
to hide it. Like literally in the Brazilian cut of the trailer that was released, you see one of the villains punched, or the animation is that the villain is punched, but you don't see who's punching him. And it's because they didn't include that CG to hide a plot detail, which is
I think that that's the case. I think that that's actually the case, and I'll bet you that they struggled with this trailer because there's some multiverse stuff happening that they don't want to reveal. And
Yeah.
as I just said with Shang-Chi, shame on them for doing that. I'm glad they're not. So fine. I'm going to see the movie. Don't worry. Like this, it's like you don't have to spoil the film. And thank you for not doing it.
And this also has the weight of this being the last MCU Spider-Man film, potentially, pending any deal between Disney and Sony, because Sony still has the rights, and they've built out their Spider-Man universe, with Venom being a huge financial success, with the Jared Leto Morbius film that's going to be coming out, and if Tom Holland is going to continue as Spider-Man after this film, it's going to be under the Sony, Marvel Entertainment partnership banner rather than the MCU. So they're forced into some type of resolution, which is why there's all this multiversal stuff that's coming out. Not to say it's going to be a bad thing, because as we saw from Into the Spider-Verse, one of the best superhero films in recent memory, they can do a fantastic job with that. But for people who are so invested in the MCU storyline, this does feel like a conclusion of a trilogy. Like there's an arc that the Tom Holland Peter Parker has followed, and the stakes I think they did lay out, which were a different take. I don't want to talk specifically, but the relationship between Spider-Man and the villains of Spider-Man in past films, I think is something that's addressed. So I do like that take, at least.
Hey, can I ask a quick question back to Shang-Chi real quick?
Yeah.
We had just watched last weekend as a family Iron Man 3, which couldn't have been more timely. And I wanted to know, when you guys saw that and you saw the Mandarin in that and the logo, did you know there was a connection?
In the very beginning, the opening shot of the flag with the 10 rings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
There was a short film, like a DVD bonus film, that came out after Iron Man 3 that starred Ben Kingsley, the Trevor Slattery character,
Yeah.
where he's in prison, and he's like his Weasley actor self, because that was the big twist in Iron Man 3. And the short film concludes, he's in prison for his crimes, what he did in Iron Man 3, but then he gets whisked away and kidnapped by the real Mandarin's people. And so that was an acknowledgement that there was a real Mandarin character that was not happy about the Ben Kingsley co-opting of the name.
Very cool.
Yeah, so this falls in that, and I think I like the not making that character a straight up traditional villain, having some depth to it, and
Totally.
the motivations being relatable, I think was a really smart thing for that team. Okay, let's move on from pop culture. A massive bit of tech news that dropped this morning. It seems like, and I'm going to use the word seemingly, which is important here. It seems like Apple has reversed course in its decision and its approach to rights repair, because they announced the Apple, what is this called? The Apple Home Repair
Self-service repair.
Self-service repair program. So starting early next year for the iPhone 12 and 13, you as a owner of an iPhone can go to an apple.com website and buy select parts directly from them to repair your phones, including the battery, the screen, and the camera. Now, not only does that get you their repair guide and tools if you want it, but also importantly, diagnostic software to make sure the things that only the Genius Bar had access to, diagnostic software to make sure the installs and the repairs have been done correctly, which is theoretically a massive, massive deal.
It's a huge shift in mentality. I would note that there is indications, and it's just indications. We need like more details that doing a DIY repair through this self-service repair program won't invalidate your warranty unless you do stupid stuff. Um, and so there's some, caveats and clarifications we need there. You have to buy the part through Apple for this to work. And so, like, one of the questions that I think is going to emerge is I can't just take another Apple phone and repurpose a part or buy a third party part and put it into the phone and have it work, because there seems to be something in in the manual, and iFixit did a whole blog post about this, that you have to kind of scan a barcode around this. So it's not sort of perfect. And there's going to be a lot of questions, and I imagine is going to be hella expensive to do
Yep.
this. Because if we've learned anything about the third party repair program that Apple has, is that it comes at a premium price over anything else. So I imagine the parts are just going to be really expensive. All my things said, this is a huge shift, and this is the second shift on right to repair that we've seen from Apple in 2 weeks. Um, I I honestly don't understand it,
Oh,
because
they
it
they
is
had a
it
crisis of conscience. They just felt, yeah, no, they
uh
went to church. No, who
Can't
knows?
even say it with a straight face.
They're under pressure, and
They're
under
getting
pressure
ahead
from
of regulation. They're getting ahead of. I mean, this kind of in the same line of like the EU deciding that Apple will eventually have to put USB-C ports on their phones in order to sell those iPhones over there. This is, I think, trying to get ahead of a legislation and a right to repair movement
yeah.
and congressional pressure.
I heard it termed this way, like right to repair is something that you can easily explain. So you can imagine Congress passing a law around it, because you can basically hold up your phone and basically say, I have no right, I don't actually own this, and I have no actual right to repair it. And like people get that. But when you get into like section 230 and all this other stuff, it gets really like confusing really quickly. So I understand the threat of the legislation, but they're moving really fast. Like the legislation, there's no like bill that's going to pass in January or February. They're really moving quickly around this. And I think that's the most surprising part for me is isn't that they announced this, but they announced it and they said it's coming early 2022, meaning like January or February, that this program is going to be alive.
yeah, I
Yeah,
wonder what happens if you order a kit and you go to repair your screen and then it all goes wrong. I guess then you're going to a pro, but you're out the cost of the screen. It does. There's going to be some support calls that Apple never wanted to deal with, and I bet that is going to be a weird area for me personally. I'm super happy about it, but I do think it's going to cause some problems. But it's a good problem to have, I think, in the scope of right to repair. I
Yeah.
will mention one quote along these lines that The Verge pulls out that Apple says it is for, quote, individual technicians with the knowledge and experience to repair electronic devices. So that's not everybody.
So do you think they're going to make this hard and expensive to discourage it? Yeah, I would think so, because the key item that Norm listed was battery. Battery's never been a replaceable piece since, well, like since ever basically in the iPhone, and that's true across Android phones now too. Um, I feel like that's the biggest one, because that's the actual consumable inside of the phone. I don't think you actually have to replace your camera very often. Yeah, the screen, but the battery is the one that sticks out to me as the one that could cannibalize some marginal business in terms of upgrades.
Right.
well, and Apple's they've changed the language in terms of how they talk about the battery. They do treat the battery and the way it's designed for phones as a consumable. It's a thing that over time you're not expected to have the same battery life based on even normal operations of the phone, and that people, that's why they had the battery swap out program and made that
Mhm.
at least relatively affordable if you want to have a phone last more than, still be feel fresh after 5 years. Uh, they wrap up their announcement by saying that this move also is a way that they're gonna keep their phones. What do they say? Like they're going to increase the repairability. They're designing products for durability, longevity, and increase repairability. So I wonder, because currently, or even in past iPhones, to remove the screen requires heat gun, prying. Like there are a lot of places where it could go wrong. Does this change the way they approach even the design and the construction of the phone so that it's easier to get into and it's
Yeah,
less glue, for
and
example?
part of that, their design is in favor of form factor and making it as condensed as possible. So
Yeah.
I wonder if there'll be concessions on that. Like, will we finally see a phone that's larger than last year's at some point?
Or less
I,
waterproof.
Hmm.
oh, that's a big deal. The IP6 like rating and whatnot. I think the glue is the biggest thing preventing repairs, especially on the battery. Also, I wonder, like, so yes, they're announcing this for the 12 and 13. How long are they going to maintain your ability to buy parts for the 12 and 13? 3 years? 5 years? Like, how many? Because, like, what does end of life mean in terms of right to repair for something like this when they cycle new phones every year?
I think because of the supply chain perspective, it's the same supply chain theoretically as the independent repair shops who go through the same program. It's going to a non-issue. Like if a repair shop can buy from the same place and buy those parts from Apple, then the direct-to-consumer line it's just pulling from the same warehouse. They did say it's going to move over to their laptops as well, the M1 laptops, and that's also a big deal for battery life and those reasons. Did you notice on their Apple press release page they have these like illustrations of these people repairing their phones in their kitchens, and they're all wearing like the wristbands with the static discharge wristbands connected like this. And I don't know if I've ever seen a repair shop wear one of those.
Oh, they do.
They
They
do
do. Yeah,
technicians at repair shops.
I
Okay,
the good
I,
ones.
I think if you're going to criticize the illustrations, there's at least two people wearing socks with sandals in these illustrations. It's just totally unacceptable for a high design company to put that in.
yeah, it's fascinating. I do think going back to the intention of this versus the practice, the actual execution of it. Um, we're optimistic, but we also I don't think Apple would have done this unless if not for pressure from folks like iFixit and also the whole rights repair movement and the looming legislation that people are trying to get passed to make things even more open.
I
It's going to be
still
expensive.
think the frontier of this conversation is going to be in the electric vehicles, because what does it mean to actually repair those that you kind of own but you don't? But do you? I think that's going to be the real struggle.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys
What
have watched Louis Rossman's videos on YouTube. He's the repair technician in New York who has gotten so involved in this movement. He's been to DC to, help promote it. And I'll be very curious to hear his take on this because he will have the inside track. He knows what parts are available currently and what parts, he'll know. Like, is this a good thing? I'll be curious to hear his take.
one company though a little more open to repair and hopefully in terms of supply for parts is Valve with their upcoming hardware, the Steamdeck, which we know delayed at least 2 months, which we talked about last week. But also they had a recent live stream, kind of an open for developers to ask questions and also for them to dive a little deeper into the hardware design of the Steam Deck. The whole video is on YouTube. I'll link it in the description below. I haven't had a chance to actually watch all of this. Jeremy, you said you did?
Yeah, I attended the virtual conference. I got permission from work. Hey, let's go. Let's check this out. We're actually very interested in this device. Like we're all, obviously, we'd love to see the PC platform become sort of accessible into the extent that the Switch is. So this is cool. So I was curious, what does it take to make a game feel native on the device, and what does it take like to develop to it? And they've got a lot of interesting tools at their disposal. That they will have um, a you'll be able to basically develop on PC, and then using an app that's on on Steam, you'll be able to compile and send it directly to the device. That's of course running SteamOS, which is a Linux distribution that they will distribute. They're going to distribute Linux, their version of Steam, their version of Linux called SteamOS, as builds that you have to install. But eventually, they're going to distribute it as an OS that anybody can just install on any box that they want. They talked about, if right now they have a very limited number of dev kits, so they recommended a very specific mini PC and display that are very close to the hardware specs of the Steam Deck, so people can develop with something that's equivalent hardware wise. They talked about how the Steam Deck itself can actually look like a Steam Deck controller to Windows or to Steam on any OS, and so you'll be able to run as a developer if you want to test your game quickly on a PC, on a Windows PC. You can use the Steam Deck itself to control a Windows build. So that's super cool.
Sure. Yeah.
And all of the inputs are available. And there's a lot of inputs on the Steam Deck.
Right.
From touchpads to different to IMU to touchscreen to of course the D-pad and button layout. Bluetooth 5.0, it's going to support wireless headphones simultaneous with multiple controllers all at the same time. Super cool. They're saying that the game performance should be the same. They're expecting it to be the same whether you're plugged in or not. So they're really like I think they'll probably end up having to sacrifice some battery life, but they've also worked really closely with AMD in order to maximize the performance of that chip.
So it runs at full watt TDP.
Yeah.
And they've designed the cooling as such so that they're going to max out that even if it's running on battery.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're saying if you submit your game to them, if you request that your game be tested for verified, which users, when they boot up the Steam Deck, they'll be presented with a version of the Steam Store, and the only games that they'll surface will be verified games for Steam Deck, and those are the games that play perfectly with and it feels seamless and native. There are other categories we've talked about in weeks past where you have to like pull up the in-game keyboard and like configure things in order to get it working. It is a PC, so you can make basically anything work if you configure it enough and you're happy with performance. I don't know. There could be performance issues for some games, but if you ask that your game be verified, because everybody's going to want that, there's a 1 week wait potentially to be verified, which isn't that bad, but they've hired a ton of people in order to test all these games. Yeah. Oh, and if you're browsing Steam and you own a deck, you'll be able to see which games in your PC in any build of Steam. If you're on PC or whatever, you'll be able to see what games are verified. If you don't own a deck, they don't surface that, so they're pointing that out to you as an owner so that you can start adding things to your account or buying things based on that data. It's cool.
Yeah. For people who struggle to choose between which version of the Steam Deck, because there are differences in not just the storage capacity, but also the type of memory, the storage that's used. They said in their testing, it's less than a 25% difference in their early testing for boot times between the eMMC drives on the lower end models and the NVMe SSDs, or even the SD card if you want to have your game stored there. So between the fastest NVMe and the SD card, maybe a 25% at most difference in load times. The battery, like it runs at that full 45 watts when it's plugged in, but even then it could also, when you're on battery alone, it can provide 7.5 watts of power to plugged in peripherals. So it can also support powering external controllers. 16 gigs of RAM, which they've said before, and the GPU can pull up to I think 8 gigs of that. So it's shared DDR5 RAM, which we're seeing emerge being more in the marketplace now because of the new Intel chips as well. They were launched last week, but all of this is and when it's running on a battery in standby time, they said it could run for days or up to what it's a week or so without hours or even days without needing to be plugged in when it's in a suspended state, which tells me you're going to want to have it plugged in when you're not using it.
Yeah.
If you have it unplugged for days, that those days easily become a week, and then you're gonna, just like a Nintendo Switch, you're gonna have a dead console without being plugged in.
They're also improving their cloud save technology for right now in Steam. I think typically like you can do cloud syncs, but you have to quit the game in order for it to like really send up the big payload. And then if you then start your game at another PC, you can continue where you left off if you take advantage of that service. But they're
Mhm.
adding the ability to basically suspend a game, so you can, as you would with a Switch or a console, be mid game, suspend it, just put the PC in suspension, and then you can actually pick up where you left off from another PC. And that's cool. Like that is a step towards consoleizing the PC experience for sure, and a good one, I think. And I guess I say that cautiously because there are many PC users who don't like to think of the PC as a console, but I think for the market, like this is a very good thing. I think Steam Deck potentially has a role to encourage more PC gamers to come on board that platform.
Yeah. Last bits that were pulled out from an Ars Technica summary of this. There's a gyro input, of course, and the
Yep.
gyro can be set up to be calibrated only when you touch the joysticks, the capacitive joysticks, which makes sense. So if you're holding it
Wow.
up, you're picking up the console, it recenters or recalibrates as soon as or only when you start handling the thumbsticks. There's the output, video output can run two 4K displays at 60 FPS in case you're going to plug this in your TV or use it as a computer, running Steam OS or even Windows. If a game's not on Steam, you can still run it using the Proton compatibility layer, and no plans for a 5G or LTE cellular version.
Well, but they did say that they are definitely thinking multi-generational. Like they
Mm,
said, we're not talking about anything right now. That we don't have any plans. You can of course share a hotspot from your phone at any
sure.
time, and that is going to solve that problem for 99% of the
Yeah.
people out there. But they did say, we are definitely thinking of this as a multi-generational product. So who knows what the future holds, but not this one.
Yeah. Last story in tech, is a VR story. We had I guess, what is this division even called now? Reality Labs Research. It's no longer Facebook Reality Labs. Reality Labs Research, RL, had a blog post one of their divisions, one of their teams who's working on active haptic feedback technology for VR and presumably even AR. On something like the Quest controllers or standard touch controllers, you have some passive haptics, or you're gripping something, feeling contoured like you're holding like the stock of a gun or the grip of a gun or something as you're playing those games, or the buttons provide some natural haptics. But in the future, when you're just using hand tracking or those neural wristbands, what will haptics be like? And they showed some video and some photos of the gloves that they've been working on, which have a haptic glove that has like tiny pads and a bunch of tubes that send some like little air pads, and that aren't using like 1,000 little motors in your hand. Microfluidics is the technology they're using.
Mhm.
Which is interesting because we've used similar technology in Hapdex, the Hapdex gloves. Jeremy, did you get a chance to try
Uh,
those gloves?
I don't know. This sounds familiar.
But remember, there are gloves that have like these huge tubes, and then there's like a compressor, or that a regulator that then pumps, and you have like tiny little pads that inflate and give you sensation in the tip of your fingertips, and a little bit of not just the sensational haptics, but also the actuators that kind of give you resistance as well. So if you grab an object, it'll lock your fingers in based on the size of the object, as well as giving you a sensational haptics. We've seen that in Hapdex, and Hapdex put a blog post up saying that they think this is their technology, and so it'll be interesting to see how Meta's research lab responds, and if it is the same type of microfluidics technology. But the fact that both these companies are moving toward similar directions in acknowledging that we'll need some type of haptic solution, and they think 10 years, 15 years down the line, something that's not going to require a big pump essentially that you carry around with you, that you'll need to have some way of getting sensation in VR. It's not an easy solution or easy problem to solve. And I'm based on what I've seen so far, I don't know if they're going to be able to find a way to have gloves give you real sensation, not just like the kind of resistance haptics that we've seen with like, things that lock your fingers in place as you grab objects.
Yep.
But yeah, well worth reading and checking out the videos. And, of course, everyone is thinking about this and trying to come up with solutions to this. Last story is a Demio update. 3 of us did not succeed at completing our Demio quests in our last outing.
It's true.
But we have a deadline now because the next Demio quest is launching December 16th, and it's called The Roots of Evil. Like a forest theme campaign, perhaps?
Yes, and like the whole roots part is a pun there. They said there's gonna be 8 levels. It's still 3 levels that you go through in each campaign, but 8 different levels so that you'll get, different excuse me, you'll get different levels each time. There's some new enemies that they previewed the art for, that you'll see, and then a new boss as well. And they're displaying a new class. A bard is joining the fight.
Yeah, that's exciting. But I assume it still maxes out at 4 people, so you have to choose which ones you want to bring. That's interesting from a balance standpoint.
I'm curious from people who've played Demio, other people who played maybe in groups, do they stick with the same class among their friend group, or do they switch it up? Because as we've played it, we've locked into the classes that we like, and we haven't really switched it up yet. And maybe we haven't played enough where we need that variability. I guess we're still trying to complete the campaigns, but I'm curious how people play, and because that having the extra option, the bard, is going to force us at least to make decisions.
Yeah, which we play as the tank, the mage, and the archer. Which one should we sacrifice if we wanted a bard? Which one of those 3 would we say let's set him on the bench and take the bard instead? The mage.
And we don't even go with the assassin right now.
No, we don't.
Right? Which is very powerful for the cloaking and the backstabbing power. So we get a rando occasionally. But we're happy to play with just 3 people. So which 3 out of 5? That's a lot of different options, different permutations of 3 that we can do that. As well as the 8 different level designs that randomize to the 3 stages of this campaign. I love that they're doing free updates. Great on them. This is from Resolution Games, of course, and yeah, still one of our favorite games of the year.
There's also a new walkabout mini golf course that was revealed. Did you see that? I don't know. You guys probably don't play that as much as me because I play with a buddy back in Virginia. It's by the way, it's a great way to hang out in VR. It's one of my favorites, especially if you just want to chat. You just go and hang out and play some mini golf, play some rounds. It's got a lot of courses in there for free, and they all have a nighttime version. But they just announced on Twitter a new course coming out around the same time. Or no, actually, it comes out this Thursday. No, sooner than Demio. But yeah, that's looking good too. So if you play, but they are going to start charging for courses. They've released a handful of courses for free up until now, and they're going to start charging in order to make some money back on those. And I fully encourage them to do that. They're only going to be $3. It looks great.
Super reasonable. And it's like you said, it's a whole new environment for hanging out with people. What's the max players on that?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, I just play with one friend. I don't have that many friends, so what am I going to do? Like, I can invite everybody and have a 4-player game.
All right, there you go. That does it for this week's episode. We're off next week, I believe. I might throw up an episode, a vintage one. And any Black Friday plans, Shore?
Not really. I am not in the market for much. So, and a lot of the Black Friday stuff is just happening early this year. They're just spreading it out.
Yeah. Will Santa arrive this year at all, or stuck on a shipping container?
5 players.
5 players. Got it. All right. Well, have a wonderful holiday break, everyone. Thanksgiving break. Eat a lot of turkey. Set up your trees if you set them up. It's the earliest reasonable time to set up a Christmas tree. I think the Friday after Thanksgiving, anytime before, you're crazy. Anytime after, you're not making the most out of your tree time. And we'll reconvene in 2 weeks' time. Again, if you haven't checked it out, please watch the build series that just debuted on Tested, documenting the months-long journey of putting together, from start to finish, Adam's spacesuits that were featured in the short film we released last week. I'll play the outro this week because we've had some pretty good ones being sent. So here we go. See you next time.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
So you're like, Kat, if you had stopped peeing, then I could buy like a top-end Steamdeck or like, you know, two Oculus Quests. No, right? Like these are how financial decisions are made. Or you could tell your kid, right? Like, if you can get the cat to stop peeing everywhere, just stop peeing in general, you know, that might be a new video card upgrade for you. Replace cat with dog, right, Jeremy?
Literally the same problem.
Same problem. All right, good luck with the dog. See you next week. Bye.